Won't you join me?
Light up the sky.
I just think we ought to wait till after you graduate.
I don't.
It's only a month.
Janet, a month.
Please.
It's all right. I personally consider us engaged as of now. Congratulations.
David, no.
Look, you can say yes in a taxi. I have a 2:30 appointment.
I'm staying right here.
Oh, afraid you'll say yes?
I'll see you tonight at Brandon's party.
Okay. You can say yes there just as well as in a taxi. Goodbye, darling.
Bye.
That's the last time she ever saw him alive. And that's the last time you'll ever see him alive. What happened to David Kentley changed my life completely, and the lives of 7 others. Janet Walker, Henry Kentley, the boy's father, his aunt, Mrs. Atwater, his best friend, Kenneth Lawrence, a housekeeper named Mrs. Wilson, and the 2 who were responsible for everything, Brandon Shaw and Philip Morgan.
Mouse, cat and mouse.
Philip.
Which is the cat and which is the mouse?
Enough of that.
All right, enough. Easy, I'll take care of you. Won't. I'd just as soon kill you as kill him.
Oh. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Old Classic Cinema. Today we are discussing Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, starring John Dall, Farley Granger, and James Stewart. And today, Luke, who do we have today as a special guest?
We have the amazing Colin Carman.
Yes,
Welcome.
he is back again by pure demand.
Yes. We had so much fun talking about Feud and your amazing article that you wrote, but thank you so much for agreeing to come on for a proper film review. We know that you are a fan of Rope, so thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Colin.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Yay! So excited to talk about this movie. So, shall we get into some details before we get into... Alrighty then. So, Rope, directed by the amazing Sir Alfred Hitchcock, whose films need no introduction, but at least leading up to this movie, Rebecca, Suspicion, Shadow of a Doubt, Lifeboat, and Notorious. This film, of course, is based on the 1929 stage play of the same name by Patrick Hamilton, with a screenplay by Arthur Lawrence. As Christian said, this film stars James Stewart as Rupert Cadell, John Dall as Brandon Shaw, Farley Granger as Philip Morgan, Sir Cedric Hardwicke as Henry Kentley, and Constance Collier as Anita Atwater. A quick synopsis of our film. Brandon Shaw and Philip Morgan believe that they can pull off the perfect crime. The pair murder their former classmate from prep school, David Kentley, proceed to place his body in a wooden chest in the middle of their New York City apartment, and host a dinner party with Daniel's family and fiancé as guests. As the evening progresses, Rupert Cadell, the former headmaster of the prep school that Brandon, Philip, and David attended, arrives, and suspicions surrounding David's absence begin to grow, and the question of whether or not Brandon and Philip will get away with it lingers in the air. This film was released on September the 25th, 1948, made on a budget of $1.5 million, and grossed approximately $2.2 million at the box office. This film didn't get any Oscar nominations, which I think is rude because this is such a good movie. But you can watch this on YouTube Movies, Apple TV, and Amazon Videos, wherever you get your films. So, let us begin with our guest, Mr. Colin. So, our first of all of our questions is, what appeals to you about this movie? And follow-up question, what was the first time that you watched this movie?
Wow. Thank you, Luke. I don't remember when I first recalled it, but having great parents, I was schooled in Hitchcock and the Masters. And so I can't totally remember the first time, but I have watched it several times in preparation for this pod, and it's only 80 minutes. It, as you said, was Flop City, right? It didn't land. I think, and I went down an academic rabbit hole this morning reading the film critics and the graduate students who just eat this up, but with audiences, no, it was not a success, for reasons we can discuss. But I can't recall when I first saw it, but once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right. It is so truly captivating. And what would you say is your favorite thing or aspect about this film that appeals to you so much?
Well, we're going to get to the infamous, we got to just say it now, Anal Rope by D.A. Miller, a 90s seminal essay. There's going to be a lot of bad puns here, but it's a seminal essay in queer theory called Anal Rope. You know what? Going back, that's probably where I was first aware of it, because I had to read that essay in graduate school. So maybe that's where I first became aware of it. But I think it's one of these films that you want to study, but I wouldn't put it on for like friends or guests. Like, it's good for our analytical purposes here, but it's not a film that I'd be like, hey, let's watch Rope, in the way that I would show a friend Psycho, or I know Christian just did with Jay Jacobson, Strangers on a Train. And I was thinking this film is in the queer trifecta of Hitchcock, because I'd put there Psycho, Strangers, Rope. These are the queerest of Hitchcock's films. But I love it for its ways of analyzing, but as entertainment, no, Flop City.
I totally yes, I fell down my rabbit hole of research too, and the critical reception was not favorable in 1948. The contemporaneous reviews were not in this movie's favor. But in spite of that, I think that it has definitely had a new life outside of its original theatrical release. I have this sort of like weird, like, three category theory about movies where I feel like there are films that when they come out, they are critically acclaimed, and then they stay critically acclaimed for however long it's been since their release. Then there are films that are critically acclaimed, that come out but then slowly fizzle out and don't stay in the pop culture consciousness. And then the third category, which is films that flop in their initial release and then find a new love and a new fandom after the fact. And I think that Rope falls into that third category. But Christian, what appeals to you about Rope, and when was the first time that you watched it? Because you have this in your digital library, which thank you, friend, for letting I could watch it.
Yeah, well, to answer your first part B question, I actually watched this a couple of years ago in preparation for this podcast in itself. Because I've never seen it before, and I said, oh, I need to watch this because this is a Hitchcock film. If it's Hitchcock, then I'll just sit down and watch it. And I was just blown away by the performances at first. But then I was also blown away by the magical art of the camera itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, as like a couple of days ago, Luke and I were both doing our rabbit hole research. I did not know. I was yesterday years old when I found out that this was based on a true crime.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know.
Mm-hmm.
I was just blissfully unaware. And then I'm a very big true crime junkie. So once I found out about that, I said, oh, interesting. Yeah.
Well, looming over all of this is Leopold and Loeb,
Yes.
right? And so doing a little research, it's a 1924 murder
Mm-hmm.
and not a perfect crime because one of the killers left his spectacles or eyeglasses behind. They were lovers, and we have to, of course, talk about homosexuality. They were not sentenced to death because they used a mental illness defense. Because, of course, at that time in the 1920s in Chicago, homosexuality would have been a kind of mental derangement. One of them was killed in prison. That's Loeb in 1936. But yeah, it's a horrendous crime that inspired the play, that then inspired the film. If inspiration is the right word, but it's all based on this killing by two very intellectual gay guys. And so that became the play, and then that became the film.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because there's been, as somebody who's a big history nerd, there's been quite a number of like true crime stories that in the press were deemed crime of the century, and this was one of them. And you had pretty much the whole world glued to this in terms of just being so horrified, but asking so many questions of how could two people possibly do something like this? What would motivate them to kill a 14-year-old in the way that they did it? And I just think that the movie and I haven't read the play yet. I want to get my hands on a copy, but at least from this movie, it definitely presents the idea that they believe that they are intellectually superior to people, which then gives them the right to choose who lives and who dies, which is a very, very not accurate thing that you should adapt in your everyday walk of life, because that is not the good way to live and think that you are morally superior to others, which we will get to later. I'm going to stick a pin in that. But
this room is littered with bodies. Is that a bad thing you're saying then? I'm sorry. But I was about to serve, a brunch on top of it. I'm sorry.
We talked about this. You have to clear the bodies before you eat.
I was about to serve a brunch right on top of this. And cannibalism is part of it. But I'm sorry. I guess I am not beyond good and evil. Okay. All right.
Oh my God.
Stand corrected.
Oh wow. Okay. But
sorry.
No, that was brilliant. I mean, that was a good laugh. But I was gonna say, I was first made aware of this movie through the celluloid closet, because there is a chunk of this film that is talked about in discourse, and both Arthur Lawrence, the screenwriter, and Farley Granger are featured in the documentary talking about their making of the movie and their queer take on this film, because this movie was clearly made in the middle of when the production code was in full effect. So you couldn't say the word homosexual on screen, but the play is so much more direct in the fact that not only are Brandon and Philip lovers, but also the character of Rupert in the original play was described as an Oscar Wilde effeminate professor that supposedly also had a sexual relationship with Brandon back when they were in school. And all of that had to be diluted and everything, and because of the censorship. And I also think that because it had been 20 years since the Leopold and Loeb case, but I think that combined with just how, even without saying it, that you don't have to go searching too far under the like theoretical lens for the queerness. It's sitting right there on the surface. And that's what I think 40s audiences rejected, because they didn't want to talk about it. And I'm quoting Arthur Lawrence in an interview where he was like, no, nice people didn't want to talk about it. And so that's why this movie did not do so well. But I love Alfred Hitchcock. I love Rebecca, and I adored Rear Window. I thought that was one of the best thrillers. I had never seen it before. We recorded our episode last year with Lex, and it was such a great movie. And of course, there's Notorious and Suspicion and Psycho, and I'm still working my way through all the rest of his filmography, but he is such a brilliant director. And like Christian said, I was blown away by the technical aspects of this, because as someone who comes from the world of theater, as someone who started their life as an actor, and who is myself an aspiring playwright, I love that Hitchcock effectively filmed a stage play in one giant continuous take. And we'll talk about the technical aspects when we get to our fun facts and behind the scenes. But the way that he's able to pull that off in an 80-minute runtime with the technical aspects going for it, and you do see his sleight of hand, but the fact that it almost feels so seamless that it's like, this is the most brilliant way to shoot a movie and set it in real time. And then on top of that, you have the level of suspense and thriller aspect of this movie that I think is so captivating. So that's what really got me. And my first time watching it was yesterday. So I gobbled it up and absolutely adored it. So yes, this is
I'm going to push back a little bit in that I think Jimmy Stewart, that, by the way, is the Tom Hanks of an earlier generation. So when I have to explain what Jimmy Stewart was, I'll say, it's our Tom Hanks. He can do comedy, he can do drama, and you just like this person. I think he's miscast. I don't think he is really the evil professor. And this is the first of 4 films that'll do with Hitchcock, I believe.
This is his very first one that he does with Hitchcock.
Very first one. And his quote, which is great, was, "It's really about the camera, this film." And you already brought up the camera. He said, "Only things being rehearsed is the camera, not the actors." And you brought up Luke, the camera, which in those days was giant. It would involve changing the set and moving it around. And if we talk about Hitchcock, we got to talk about the gaze and the way, a pun intended, there are many more puns to come.
Gaze.
But isn't that Kate Blanchett's line when she did this in the interview infamously? Love her, love Lydia Tarr, but that was a no-go. But yeah, the camera, it's so much there as a character. But we could talk about it, but I don't think Jimmy is cast well here as the, evil influence. And then also, I'll let you go, but if Rupert is heterosexuality is ultimately a hypocrisy. It's hypocritical influence because he raised these prep school boys to commit the perfect murder. They did it. And then he, at the end, there are no spoilers when films are from 1948. So, but, and if you're listening to the pod, you know the ending, but he's calling the whistle on the very monsters he made. So you go, but it's all cuckoo.
Well, I have it later in my notes, but Cary Grant was the original choice for the role of Rupert. And that was because Hitchcock and Lawrence wanted to cast gay actors in these roles because they knew that this was a queer story. And Montgomery Clift was also approached to play. I couldn't find in my research if he was either asked to play Brandon or Philip, but I would assume Philip because I think that Montgomery Clift would have fit that part better. But both Cary and Montgomery turned the movie down because they said it would hurt our image if we were to star in this movie because it was already open secret in Hollywood about their queerness. And if the general public were to see them in this film, it would just be like throwing gasoline on the fire for their image, which I think would have hurt them as movie stars. And Arthur Lawrence very begrudgingly has also said in many interviews that he thought that Jimmy Stewart was miscast as well, because if the whole conceit of this is that you also have this professor that was, again, designed and based off of an Oscar Wilde type of caricature, to cast Jimmy Stewart and play it on the opposite end of the spectrum as completely heterosexual, it then doesn't have the full integrity of what the play had going for. And Christian and I have talked about this before, that we've always said that theater was always more progressive than Hollywood was, because what you could do on a stage was always ahead of the curve when it came to what Hollywood was doing. We talked about, in one of my favorite examples of this is The Children's Hour. When Lillian Hellman's play premiered, you couldn't say the word homosexual on the stage, but because the play was such a success, the censors in New York chose to ignore it. But when they adapted it for a movie in 1936, they had to make it completely heterosexual. And it wasn't until the 1961 version with Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine that the original homosexual themes were put back into the film. And with this one, it's such a delicate dance because, again, audiences knew that this was based on real people. And you have two not openly, but two known queer actors playing this murderous couple. And they're not playing it, like, they're not trying to fake being straight. Like, the way that they are blocked and the way that their bodies are so close to one another, my favorite, and it's not supposed to be a laughable moment, but it's that moment where Philip asked Brandon, how did you feel when you were doing it? And the way that his breath is just the way that he, like, how did you feel? It almost feels like they're talking. If you didn't know they just committed a murder, you would have thought they were talking about a hookup. And it's like,
well, they smoke
that's even more relevant.
They smoke a cigarette after the killing. Yeah.
Yes. What were you saying?
Colin actually stole what I was about to say. Oh. There you go.
Literally. I was going to do my Cary Grant imitation.
Oh,
and when Cary read this script and he said, "This is too gay for me, I'm not going to do it."
Which is
to Luke's point, this is not subtext, Alfred. This is text. Okay, I'll stop. But to Luke's point, this is not subtext at this point. It's text. It's on the surface. And we would be bad gays if we didn't talk about women, and we'll get there, but it's another element in that Janet, as the love interest, is not in a love triangle. She's in a love rectangle. She's traded between dead David. David, by the way, is the archetype of male beauty, right? From Michelangelo. I was also really interested. I have so much to say about this film, but if you look at the credits, everything is framed around David. David's girl, David's rival,
I
David's
noticed that.
father. Everything is anchored on David, and he's the unseen male beauty. But back to Janet. Janet, who describes herself, and it's been discussed as a misogynistic film. She says, "I'm such an idiot girl." At one point, at the buffet table, but again, she's been with, I think, Brandon, David, and
Kenta.
she's essentially right. And so we can talk about the women in the film too, but they're furniture. They're these very one-dimensional housekeeper, daffy aunt who's into astrology, and Janet. And you know, it's problematic, as we like to say in academe. It's
Well, I actually, maybe this is a hot take, but I disagree with you, Colin.
go for it.
I think that the women in this film, even though their archetypes could be that of very one-dimensional, I don't think that they play them. I think that Janet is the most three-dimensional female character, and I love whenever a woman, especially in a movie from this time period, is given such like sharp, like sassy dialogue. And I think that she does such a wonderful job holding her own space in this movie because again, there's only three women in this entire film.
Mhm.
And I think that again, from the way that she's costumed, from the way that she just carries herself and always has a sassy quip. I think that she is such a delicious character, even though the movie's not about her. I think that she makes a wonderful addition to it, and I love how she is no nonsense with Brandon when she's like, "You douchebag! Like you deliberately." Brought my ex-boyfriend here and also invited my fiance, who for some reason hasn't shown up yet. Meanwhile, he's rotting in a box. And I love how she's like gets in Brandon's face and calls him out for it because she knows that he's
Mm.
stirring the shit pot when it comes to being
Hmm.
messy. And I think
Hmm.
that there is something really nice about her characterization that I really personally enjoyed because it's yes, it is unfortunate that when we do look back at movies from this time period, we can often find that the female characters are either one-dimensional, the movie doesn't pass the Bechdel test, or they just feel like props and set dressing. But I also feel that there's always, and I love it when I see this sort of a growth with the director about how you have, and even though it ebbs and flows, because I think that the second Mrs. De Winter is such an amazing female protagonist for Rebecca, and then we get an amazing female character in Rear Window with Grace Kelly's character. So I think that Hitchcock definitely, even though Janet is not his lead, she's not a Hitchcock blonde, she's not the center of this film, I find her to still be a strong female character in and amongst what is happening around her, because again, she's not the central focus, like I said.
She is not the central focus. I think that's all correct. And Janet actually says, "How queer,"
Yes.
about Philip not liking chicken. And then we get that very strange anecdote where David's dad explodes and Brandon explodes, about again this trope of eating and remember Philip not liking chicken. But yeah, it allows her to kind of say on the surface how queer. All of this is queer. And in those days, it was, you know, it was code or not code for there's something really queer going on in this whole scenario.
I and I'd love to hear what you think about this, Christian, but I almost, because again, the presence of Jimmy Stewart's character of Rupert is that in that whole conversation at dinner when they're talking about like, oh, you don't really approve of murder and everything, and this sort of idea, and almost like in a weird way, like Jimmy Stewart, like sort of predicted The Purge, where he was like, "What if we had Strangulation Day?" And it's like for one day of the week where it's like, but what I got out of it from especially that final monologue sequence after it's revealed that when Rupert opens the chest and then Brandon is like, see, this is exactly what we were talking about. This is we're the superior ones. We did this. And obviously in the script, Rupert is saying, no, this is wrong. You can't choose who lives or dies. Who are you as an individual to dictate who gets to live or die? And not, well, I mean, this is 2026, so I am going to put somewhat of a modern lens on this. But what I feel was that that monologue hit so relevant to me in today's social and political climate, because I feel that if you look at it from the way that if Brandon, even though he's a queer character, if Brandon represents the radical right, believing that there are minorities that don't deserve to live because they're the ones that are superior to queer people, women, people of color, and then you have a character like Rupert that shoves it in his face and goes, no, you can't choose who lives or dies. Like, that is not the way that humanity is supposed to function. That's the interpretational lens that I got out of it, because I feel like Rupert, obviously in jest, in joking, we talk about maybe the ridiculous hypotheses or intrusive thoughts we may have, but when someone actually does it, it's like, no, it's like, that's good in theory, but it's never good in practice. Like, we can talk about it, but you shouldn't actually do it. Like, keep that in the 5 inches between your head. Like, you actually did it. And it's like, and now you're in the wrong, and now you have to be punished because you've literally committed a murder. And to me, it just, again, like, sort of having that monologue where he corrects their error and he puts them in their place, that to me felt very much like, again, how there's these conversations that people have where they believe that they are superior to other humans and don't believe that they should have rights, they don't believe that they should live. And then you have somebody who is the voice of logic and reason and goes, no, we're people, we're humans. Everyone deserves a chance to live. No one is above another person. And I saw that as an interpretation of people looking at minorities, especially queer people, because this is our queer podcast. And Christian, I don't know. I've been hugging the mic.
I'm not on board with this theory, Luke, in a good-willed way, because if David is gay, aren't they enacting their internalized homophobia? David is part of their sexual circle, and by killing him, they're acting out their own internalized rage and shame. But Christian, you can't get into the psychology of their brains, but looming over this too is, and Luke, you made a good point, by the way. Janet quotes Freud at the table, and Nietzsche is looming over all this too. But Christian, and I have to not be Rupert the schoolmaster, so you go. Just don't kill me at the end.
No, I mean, I'll try not to. No, gosh, this whole
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot
to take in.
Psychologically, theoretically. There's a lot here. But again, as a film, you feel like you're watching a play. It leaves so much to discuss and think about. But
Yes. So I was saying that this is a movie, and with my first watching of this, I remember I was very focused on the character of Brandon. And then as I rewatched it last night, I was focusing on Farley Granger's character. And I think that was a very conscientious, smart thinking. Because with Brandon, I'm sure we might have mentioned or might not have mentioned, I think Brandon has this sort of kink with him with other people finding out what he did. And he makes it so clear with all these subtle references throughout the
Mm,
entire house. When we first see him, like Colin said, he lit the cigarette on fire as if like he just ended sex. And it's like
Mhm.
that was just an exhilarating moment for him. And then what's also exhilarating is that he's using the rope as a sort of sexual uh mechanism in a way. The way he's holding it, the way he's fiddling with it after the whole fact of this whole thing. When we meet Miss Wilson, the housekeeper, as he's showing her around the house, and she's like, "Oh, what happened to my table?" As he's walking her back, he's holding the rope as if it's a sort of fidget toy. And
mm-hmm,
when
mm.
he goes to put it away, we can see the swinging door and him just like dropping it and smiling at the same time. I'm like, there's something
I
fishy
love that visual of it.
about
That
that.
was
And I
So
love it. I'm
smart.
like, whoa, I didn't notice that before. That was very
Mhm.
interesting camera technique. Um, but yeah, there's just this sort of inclination that Brandon just loves this game that he's playing. And as Philip likes to say, it's like a cat and mouse type
Mhm.
of thing. And whereas Brandon's the cat,
Mm.
see, he loves to spin this type of yarn while when he's pulling all these people together with them not knowing that they're dead, that this dead golden child is in the trunk
The
of the
dead
freaking
golden
house
child.
molding away. I don't know how they couldn't smell him, but
He can't mold.
that's just
I
Well,
mean, again,
I know,
having
but
bodies
maybe he
littered
might have
around.
been wearing some sort of cologne or something, and maybe that
I mean, as I
I
said,
know.
with bodies littered around my apartment right now, they don't mold for quite a while. So I
No,
have a little
I know. I'm just
time.
speaking
I
theoretically.
can.
I'm just
I
speaking
know I'm not speaking
metaphorically.
theoretically. I can get to Whole Foods and grocery shop before things really go south. But but the point is that the it's hiding in plain sight, and it's in this horror tradition. You think of the Purloined Letter by Edgar Allan Poe, where the letter is there and it's right there in the room, but nobody sees it.
Yeah.
And with Hitchcock, this is so much about, again, the gaze, looking, things hiding, and you mentioned Philip's nervousness. Everything again is here. His masochism. He grinds the martini glass into his hand.
Once he hears
He's
the word David, he's like,
yes.
whoa, that.
They must have had a relationship with David. I mean, again, he's the gay body in the
I
in the
wouldn't doubt
closet.
it.
And but yeah, and to put it again into, I'm delodging or taking Luke's helpful way of framing it out of our
that's
No.
current
okay.
political
That's
climate,
okay.
only because I like to live in the past given the present. But this is 3 years after the end of World War II. Jimmy Stewart, God love him, it was bombing Germans in air raids, and we're 3 years out of World War II. And I think I heard it said that, most men died on battlefields. And so American are watching a film in which textually gay men drinking champagne, interested in playing the piano and hosting dinner parties, are strangling each other in these, beautiful apartments. We can go back to it, but this is again why we're in Flop City. This doesn't make any sense for the time period. It's not what Americans want to watch. But you go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And like I said earlier, the reviews that came out at the time were not favorable to this movie, and as a result, audiences rejected this film. And it's and I do also know that historically that after World War II, of course, it was the full like pulling back the curtain on what had happened during the Holocaust. And so that's another reason why that
Mm,
monologue that Rupert, that Jimmy Stewart's character gives at the end is so important because no, you as a person cannot sit there and say that you are superior to another human being. You cannot say that because it's simply not true. No one is superior to anybody else, and you cannot take someone's life just for the thrill of it because you think that they're stupid or a waste of space. I mean, that's the argument and probably philosophy that the Nazis had when they were killing Jews and homosexuals and disabled people and people of color. And so this movie, it is a complicated watch. As a queer person, it is hard to watch this movie when you have the two villainous characters queer and front and center in your film. But Christian, you bring up such an excellent point, and I think this is a testament to Farley Granger's performance. I feel like David is the type of partner that would literally walk into hell and fire for his significant other, which is Brandon. And David feels the most guilty, and I think I figured out why. Because David is actually the one that is doing the strangling of the rope. Brandon is holding David's body. It's Philip. I'm mixing up their names. Philip is the one who's actually strangling David with the murder weapon, which is why I think he feels more guilt throughout the course of the evening than Brandon does. Because Brandon got his boyfriend to do the actual killing, and then he can sit back with the cigarette and be like, you know what? We did it. We got away with it. And it's like, and then he's like, I just killed somebody and you want to host dinner on their coffin? Like, what are you doing? Like, stop toying with the rope and like stop. And this sort of attitude. And this is why I was curious to ask this question, if whether or not they actually did want to get caught or they did want to properly get away with it. Did they actually think that they were going to get away with this, or did they secretly want to get caught? I want to ask that question to both of you.
You go, Colin.
Well, I mean, this is feeling a therapy session now. I don't know if you guys take a copay. Can I Venmo you?
Sure.
No, sure.
We accept all forms of payment.
It's Obamacare. But anyway, that's so interesting that Philip is the sub, and I've been there in terms of this evil mastermind is manipulating the entire environment. I mean, I love the way the conversation's going. Let's take it out of the historical context into this emotional level where Brandon is manipulating, of course, that's obvious, the entire environment. And Philip is I thought his performance is a little bit overacting. Just, I don't know. It was a lot of Philip, and I love Granger because Strangers on the Train. He's a fabulous actor. He's also incredibly attractive. But I felt like his performance was a lot of like and these close-ups of him. But that's so interesting that that Brandon has manipulated the entire environment so much so that he wants them both caught, and then he wants Philip exposed as well. He wants them both to be found guilty. So this is a whole psychological level, which is with Hitchcock. How can we not? But I don't know. What are your thoughts? He willed all of this to happen. And schoolmasters don't usually carry pistols, so there's a lot of improbable stuff here. With Jimmy Stewart firing the gun at the end. And by the way, a party that lasted, who's had a party that lasted 40 minutes?
Yeah.
That was a really short party.
It was, and I think it was interrupted because of
they're worried for David. Everyone was worried about David. That's why.
David. Everything's about David. David. Everything's about David.
And I also have another, because you mentioned Edgar Allan Poe in contextual reference to this. This movie also reminded me, because I am a huge Agatha Christie fan. I adore her books. And forgive me, listeners, I'm going to spoil The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, but the way that that novel is written is that it is told in first person narration from a character that's in the closed circuit mystery of that case, but then it's revealed at the very end that the narrator is actually the murderer. And you've been effectively listening to his confession, and he's been the killer hiding in plain sight. And I think that it's really fascinating because he also had a bit of a superiority complex and believed that he was intelligent enough as a doctor to murder somebody, fully get away with it, and then be Poirot's accomplice throughout the book, but he's the killer hiding right under his nose. And I know that with this movie, Brandon, again, with the sort of like the superiority complex of like, I'm going to deliberately like put the buffet spread on the trunk that we just put David in. I'm going to deliberately tie the books with the rope. But the one thing that blew the entire thing was the hat. It was the hat. And if it wasn't for that damn hat, I think they would have gotten away with it. And I just find it so interesting because that's where I think with that element, I think that is why, at least in my opinion, I think that they wanted to get away with it. I think that if they had gotten caught, the one person, of course, that Brandon would have wanted to catch them was Rupert. And I think that that's why he deliberately invited him to the party, because he's like, I want to get away with this, but if we are going to get caught, then I want it to be from the one person who I got this idea from, believing that I could get away with this.
Exactly. He wanted to prove himself to the master. He's like, if you taught me how to do this, then you can effectively figure out with the clues that I'm leaving behind what it is that I did.
I mean, we've got master slave, we've got masochism, we've got cannibalism in an indirect way, we have homosexuality, we have all of these things that in the 1940s are unspeakable because of the Hays Code. What if the plot is irrelevant and it's a way that Hitchcock again wants to make perversity visible? You know, Hitchcock famously says, I want to watch blonde women suffer. We don't have a blonde in this film.
David's a blonde.
David's a blonde.
It's all about David.
David is our Hitchcock blonde of this movie. And
such a good
He's only in here for like 5.0 seconds.
Oh, that's so true. No, but I just think like Hitchcock and Freud is quoted by Janet. Luke made a great point about she's not just a dumb brunette. She does have some dimensionality. She does quote Freud but what if Hitchcock again just loves putting these perversities, so quote unquote, on display in the time period? And if we because you guys have done Strangers and you've done Psycho, but he's really a forerunner for perversity on film. So I guess what I'm saying is the plot, we could pick it apart, but it just kind of has so many plot holes in it. But it's just a way of Hitchcock again showcasing the technicality, the camera work, and then putting in Americans' faces this stuff that they prefer not to think about or see.
It's funny you should say that, Colin, because Hitchcock as a director, I think he loved to point out the things that we don't say in public. With many of his films, you know, this one, you have the act of getting caught. In Rear Window, you have the act of voyeurism. In Psycho, you have the act of multiple personalities, and then you also have a peeping Tom aspect of it as well. And then in Vertigo, you just have a man with mistaken identity, someone who's just wanting to believe that someone's someone that they're not.
Right.
But with Rope, I think it's most beautifully put that sometimes there are some people that have, like I said before, that have this kink or have this sort of inclination to feel like, horrible to say, but they feel like with Brandon, he feels like his frame of thought is like, okay, if I'm the master race, then I feel it's in my power to feel like I can do whatever I want and to whomever I want. But that's not
Hmm.
the case.
Hmm. Right.
I just had to point that out. I know you
Yeah.
enjoyed that, Luke.
The
Colin,
Nietzsche stuff, by the
The,
way.
the,
Oh, Luke, you go ahead. But the Nietzsche stuff is always misapplied, right? The Nazis misapplied the
yeah.
Ubermensch, the Superman stuff, and we always talk about God is dead, and
Mhm.
you guys go, but if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you.
stronger.
So
You
this is
think
like
better.
watered down philosophy, but it's just so interesting the way that sort of pop philosophy gets translated in this film. But Luke, you go.
Well, no, I agree with what Christian said in that Hitchcock definitely was one of those directors that was not afraid to put things on film that were not being talked about in polite society. And I think that has to do, and I find it really interesting when you look at Hitchcock as a director, how he started in England and then he comes to the United States. David O. Selznick signs him to a multiple year contract, makes my personal favorite Hitchcock film, which is Rebecca. But Hitchcock always felt restrained because Selznick was this tremendous micromanager. And once his contract was up, he started his own studio, which this was the first film with
Yep.
Transatlantic Productions. And
Mm.
he was like, I'm going to tell stories that I want to tell without the loomingness of a studio head over me. Now, of course, he still had to adhere to the Hayes office, but if you look at his films Rope onward, that's when he starts to get more, like you said, Christian, where you start to see these narratives where you have things that are showcased that we don't talk about. And I think that sometimes it does take a flop for you to eventually make a hit. And so you have so
Strangers was that hit after so long of
Strangers was that hit, Rear Window was that hit. It
Mm.
was but Rope is very I consider this an experimental, underrated Hitchcock gem. I do think
Yeah.
I like it how you said it earlier, Colin, that this isn't a Hitchcock movie that you would might put on for friends for like a watch party,
yeah.
but for filmmaking, from narrative storytelling, and from analytical study, I think that this is such an important film to talk about because there's so much to dissect in what you could easily see as this very simple 80-minute story, a story that's told in quote unquote real time, but
Mm.
there's so much happening both on the surface and beneath the surface with this movie. And I just think that people at the time weren't ready for it. And like I said earlier, Rope falls into that third category of movies that initially flop, but years later are exalted and find an audience.
Mhm.
So
And Hitchcock said to Truffaut in the interview, it was gimmicky and it was a failure. He acknowledged that it didn't have a happy ending, or rather, he said it didn't have the montage and an ending. It doesn't conform in other ways to the standard sort of Hollywood film, right? It doesn't have those elements in any way.
Mhm.
But some experiments fail, you know? And but it's I think a film that we love to talk about. I think that's what I'm saying, but you don't necessarily need to want to watch or rewatch multiple
Yeah.
times. I did because I'm meeting with you gentlemen, but I'm like, I don't know if I need to rewatch Rope again and again.
I mean,
Um
personally, one of my favorite Hitchcock rewatches is Rear Window.
uh Yeah.
That's just one of mine, not only for Grace Kelly, but also because of the simplicity that it has. Like there's no real thriller aspect to it. It's just a very calming movie to just put on and just, escape to. Whereas this one, huh,
It's
it
tense.
it's
It's
tense.
tense. It's yeah,
It's
yeah.
dark. It's just one teaspoon short of narcissistic
And
ability.
and what is going on with the window? I mean, that window
This
where
window, actually, this whole apartment, I want. I want this whole apartment. I'm sorry. But if I were to choose to have an apartment, where's this? I feel like this was shot in New York, but I have no idea.
It is set in
It
Manhattan.
is.
Yes.
Okay. See, this is my future apartment, guys. If you guys ever want to come, there you go.
I'll just
Wouldn't
be
it be
looking.
funny if
I'll just
I
be
can
checking in the
actually
trunk.
find an apartment that looks like this in New York City? That would be too funny.
Now, I have a hypothetical that I would like to pose to both of you and to our listeners out there if you want to comment along as well. But one of the things that I found out with Arthur Lawrence as the screenwriter is that he had claimed that originally Hitchcock was not going to show the murder on screen, but rather it was going to be implied
Fine.
that they had killed David. And for the entire movie, there is this question of is there or isn't there a body in the trunk? And then at the end of the film, Rupert opens it and yes, there is a body. But then Hitchcock chose to show the murder, and Arthur Lawrence always felt that the entire suspense was thrown out the window. But I disagree with Lawrence because I
I
think that
agree.
Yeah.
the suspense element is are they going to get caught? But do you think that the movie would have been stronger if it had not shown the murder and had been more ambiguous, or keep it as is?
Keep it as it is.
Okay.
Keep it as it is. Lawrence and Granger need to get a room.
They
I
did.
they need to get a room, those two, and calm down. This movie would be even more puzzling. And I want to say before, Hitchcock called it a nonsensical stunt. I think that's correct. So, both Jimmy Stewart and Hitchcock look back at the film with some regret. But this film would be even more of a flop if it didn't open with some kind of murder. I mean, it's like Hitchcock without murder. It's like Spielberg without aliens. We need, we need. It's Scorsese without Italians. We need this, please.
I I also I agree with you. I do think that
I say that as an Italian, so
I
I can get away with it.
I just also think that what I find the most like again most appealing about this movie, and also simultaneously what makes this film hold up for me, is again that suspenseful element of will they or won't they get caught, because that probably my favorite sequence that is filmed is when the housekeeper is clearing the buffet table. And
Oh my God.
there's a whole conversation happening that's not being filmed off camera, and she is taking the plates away and walking to the other room, coming back in, taking the candlesticks away, and then
Pulling them out and then taking them away at first.
she literally lifts the lid with Rupert next to her, and then Brandon pops into frame and is like, "That's okay. You can put these away tomorrow." And it's like, oh my God, because again, it was my first time watching it. I was like, oh my God, I am on the edge of my seat. Like, is this the moment that they get caught? And then, sure enough, it wasn't. But I didn't.
Can you imagine?
If that had opened with all of them in there, then it would have been obviously a completely different movie. But I think that again, that's the brilliance of the way that Hitchcock just simply lets the camera sit exactly where it needs to be, and you, the audience, know. And because there is a very famous interview that he gave where he was talking about how to get the element of suspense going in a movie. And Hitchcock gave this example of if you have four people sitting around a table at dinner and suddenly a bomb goes off and it blows them to smithereens, what does the audience get?
Hey there, I'm Tara.
And I'm MK.
And we are your resident Good Witch hosts of Down the Yellow Brick Pod,
preserving and peeling behind the curtain on the wonderful world of Oz.
Come for the Oz fandom,
but stay for the company that's got you on your loneliest of yellow brick roads.
Through our juicy conversations, rabbit holes, and many Oz metaphors as medicine on the pod, we have tried to make sense of the wild times we live in and have traveled back to the turn of the 20th century,
to the heyday of MGM Studios,
to a super soul 1970s smash on Broadway,
the dark fantasy film era of the 80s,
90s ice skating and musical touring shows,
a 2010s reality TV search for Dorothy,
and much more, traveling through the decades as we cover all things iconic and obscure Oz.
For us, Oz has become a portal to continuously revel in history and human connection, holding space for this magical land we all have ingrained in us and the multi-layered rainbows we each are.
You can find Down the Yellow Brick Pod wherever you listen to podcasts, on Patreon for exclusive content, on Etsy for show swag, and on IG for an accompanying scrapbook to our episodes, community, and our guests.
Can't wait to hang over the rainbow. See you in Oz.
Have you ever thought, how does everyone know about this current book? And why are they running to the bookstores and libraries to get their hands on it? Or everyone's talking about this TV show, but I feel like I'm binging it months after all of my friends and family. Well, then I have the podcast for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Rimby, the host and director of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, an arts and culture podcast. We discuss here LGBTQ plus society and culture, literature, TV, film, true crime, academic conversations, and pop culture. You can listen to us wherever you get podcasts, specifically Spotify and Apple. Make sure that you follow us on Spotify or Apple, rate and review us, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Ivory Tower Boiler Room. We hope you enjoy the podcast.
We here at That Olga Classic Cinema are excited to announce that we have recently partnered with the Gay and Lesbian Review, known as the GNLR, a bi-monthly magazine of history, culture, and politics targeting an educated readership of LGBT people and their allies that publishes essays in a wide range of disciplines as well as reviews of books, movies, and plays. Each issue has a theme, and its current issue, Victorian Times, explores some of the 19th century writers who first put legibly queer characters and actions on the page. For more info, check out their website at glreview.org. That's glreview.org. And when you subscribe, enter promo code at TOGCChoice. That is TOGCChoice for the March-April 2026 issue to receive it as a bonus copy. All right, guys, enjoy your reading, and welcome back to the show.
What I think is so masterful about the filmmaking side of it, and why I think that both what appeals and what holds up for me about this movie is just how masterful of suspense this movie is, and Hitchcock as a director, because my favorite sequence in the entire film is when the housekeeper is cleaning off the buffet table, and you have an entire conversation happening off camera, and she is removing things one at a time, and you as the audience, knowing that there's a body in that box, are then wondering, is everyone at dinner going to see this? Is she literally going to lift the lid of this? And she doesn't. But there is this wonderful interview that Hitchcock gave, I can't remember when, but he was talking about how you get the element of suspense in a movie. And he used the analogy of, you have four people sitting around a table eating dinner, and suddenly a bomb goes off. The audience only might get 10 seconds of shock, but if you take the same scene and tell the audience there's a bomb under the table that will go off in 5 minutes, the whole emotion is different. You can only get the suspense element going by giving the audience information that the characters do not have. And because we as the audience know that David is in that box, we are then on the edge of our seats wondering, is this the moment that they get caught? Is the housekeeper going to lift this lid and everyone at the party is going to see it? And it doesn't. It's written in a better way so that the payoff is stronger, and also it needs to be Rupert that opens the box. But
what's in the box?
What's in the box? It literally kept me on the edge of my seat, and I just think that that is the genius of Hitchcock as a director.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I love about this movie and why it holds up.
I think it's such a great point, Luke, but also this idea of knowing, because as gay people, we're always asked, when did you know? And then when did other people know? When did you tell them? Did they know? And as a 90s child in queer theory, I referenced, I think, Janet's homosocial triangle, rectangle earlier, but that's really from Eve Sedgwick and the epistemology of the closet. Mm-hmm. And that theory of knowing, which is so central to Rope and to queer life, which is, when did you know? When did they know? And it's like, some of these things I'm not really sure how to answer. I don't know when I knew, or maybe they knew before I knew. The kids on the playground, right, said, you're gay. I didn't know I was gay. But, again, I'm putting it back in this therapeutic context, but this film is just a minefield for all of these ideas of perversity and, knowing, not knowing. And, pun intended, again, Rupert made this mess. If he's ostensibly heterosexual and he's the detective, he created this entire homicidal, scenario.
Yeah.
It's a dead end, the film. It's hard to wrap up. Again, it's hard to wrap up a conversation about it, too, because where do you go with Rope? There, as Hitchcock said, there's no montage. There's not that we need a happy ending, but there is just a deadness to this film.
Was this Hitchcock's shortest film, or did he have any others that were just as short as this one?
I think, before, not including his silent films, I think this might be one of his shortest run times. Because we'll talk about this, the technicality of, you could only have 10 minutes of film reel in the camera, and so they had to change it. And this film only amounts to about 80 minutes long. Mm-hmm. But I think, not that the audience needs to have their hand held the entire time, but I think that the way that this film ends, which is Rupert shooting the gun out the window, Philip sitting at the piano, Brandon making himself a drink, and you hear the calamity of people being like, did you hear a shot? Call the police. And then the sirens come. That enough for me is the ending of, see, they didn't get away with it. They're going to prison. They're going to hang for this, because there's no way with him sitting right there. And it almost feels like, if you, I think I've answered my own question about whether or not, because I was going back and forth in my mind. Did they want to get away with it, or did they want to get caught? And I feel like the final shot of this movie answers my question, which is they wanted to get caught, but specifically by Rupert. If they were going to get caught by anybody, they wanted it to be Rupert, who was the man that inspired this idea. It's their ego, Brandon's ego especially. And I just feel Philip is guilty by association, but I genuinely do feel bad for him, because I feel like he didn't have the heart to do this by himself, and wouldn't have done this had it not been for the fact that he is madly in love with his dominant boyfriend and partner. And because again, like I said, it's Philip that actually strangles David with the rope. It's not Brandon. And that's why Brandon is so devil may care about this, and Philip is a bundle of nerves. And I know I know that sometimes the acting might get a little bit like
Overwrought.
overdone just a smidge, but I will say that my favorite performance in this movie is Farley Granger, because I think that he,
Hmm.
and of course uh John Dall, you can't have this movie without the two of them. I mean, they are the centerpiece of our film. I'm sorry, Jimmy Stewart, but this is not your movie.
Not
Um,
your movie.
but
No.
but
Well,
Farley
he's
Granger,
always on the cover
he's always on the
of this
damn
film.
poster, and I'm like, put the gay guys on the cover. Like, put them front and center. They should be on the cover of the poster. But I think that also, like we talked about, this you you have this dashing leading male character. He's an Oscar winner. He's a war vet. People love Jimmy Stewart, so they come to see, oh, and Alfred Hitchcock. I love him. And so you come to see this movie, and then people are left with like, well, wait a minute, this is not what we talk about in society in the 40s. And so, but then all these years later, you have three gays that are gushing over this movie and picking it apart piece by piece. And that's why I think that even if the film might have, even if I know that whenever people talk about Rope, they talk about the cinematography and the behind the scenes innovations of it, which we'll get to in a few moments. But I still actually do think that Hitchcock always had this idea and dream of filming a stage play, but never knew how to do it. And I feel like he did accomplish it with this, because stage plays, we've talked about this before, Christian, how when you adapt a play for film, you have to take the story out of the four walls of the theater in which the setting of the stage play is, because most stage plays usually only exist in one singular location, but movies allow you to go beyond that scope. But I think keeping it in here, the claustrophobia, even though it's a beautiful decorated apartment, the claustrophobia of keeping the narrative entirely in a closed circle setting is what also another layer of, I think, makes it so brilliant. Because again, it's not like there's like we're going outside or meanwhile or anything. It's like, nope, we are in this mystery, we are in this thriller, and we're all in this together, and we're gonna find out whether or not Brendan Phillip will get away with it.
That's my segue into how I think the film holds up as well, because like you said, Luke, this isn't a film where you have different sets. It's just this one apartment. And I think that's what makes it even more remarkable, is that you don't leave this place. It feels like you're just stuck there. Much like David is stuck in the little box forever. So why not? Why not have everyone else be stuck there in this apartment where it feels like the walls are closing in on each other? That's what it felt like when watching this movie again. It felt like even though this wasn't David's story, it felt like David was sort of haunting the place with making it seem even more smaller and more claustrophobic. So that maybe to mirror his own afterlife in a way.
I love that. I think that's an astute observation, Christian. I really appreciate that.
Sorry.
I appreciate it too, but I'm thinking more about the rectum, because in terms of the the closedness, the darkness, and the walls, and this is back to the D.A. Miller theory from the 90s of the anality of Rope. And we have all of these puns of the trunk, the chest, the boot in England. But it's a film that brings us back to the rectum.
Listeners, we're going to include a link in the show notes to this amazing article that Colin is referencing. But yes, this is
not to the rectum, but to
not to the rectum. No, but to the.
Oh, I have links on that.
Oh, well,
oh my God,
that privately.
But yes, I also do appreciate how like again, I talked about earlier with Janet, but also the sharp, quick-witted dialogue of this script. I think it is very sharp in the way that it is written. And I adore Arthur Lawrence. I mean, Gypsy is one of my favorite musicals, and I think that
I
it is
never knew that he had a master's
Oh,
degree
I
that
didn't
used
know
West
that
Side
either.
Story.
And we
Yeah.
have to commend Luke on pivoting so quickly from that to the conversation.
No,
But he wrote Gypsy the book or the musical?
he wrote the book for Gypsy,
Oh.
and Sondheim wrote the lyrics, and Julie Stein did the music. And
yeah.
Lawrence directed the original production as well as the Patti LuPone revival, I believe, in 2008.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and I think and Lawrence is such a great book writer and screenwriter because I think that he taps into the psyche of people really, really well. In the same way that I think that he creates this amazing, and we'll talk about it when we review it, Christian, this amazing mother-daughter dynamic with Rose and Louise. I think that he really gets into these characters' heads, and because again, we don't have lavish like set dressings. We don't have like this big we don't have like giant trains or anything, or we don't have like giant distractions. That's the word I was looking for. That takes us away from the story. We have this very intimate, and again, based on a play, premise and setting that keeps you grounded and locked in, and you're never bored. I was never bored. I feel like this movie grabs you from the first second of that scream and keeps your attention going until the very last frame. And I can't say that about most thrillers, because sometimes there's a break in the narrative and things ebb and flow. And I also think because of the short runtime, it grabs you and it holds your attention so well.
Everything's coming up, David. I have to think about the absence of the mother. I'm getting psychoanalytical again, but this film cries out for psychological readings. But David's mother is not present, right? She has a cold or something and so the mother is not there. But interesting.
So shall we get into our fun facts and behind the scenes and the making of the movie? So I have my list, but Colin, I know that this is one of your favorites. Christian, I know this is one of yours. So I'm going to take a back seat on this, and I'm going to because you wanted to talk about the technical aspects of the camera work and everything. So I'll let you start us off if you feel comfortable starting off with talking about that.
I actually didn't want to do that at all, but I can say that its magic number is 10 cuts. And so we have an 80-minute film, and it was seen even by Hitchcock as gimmicky, and all roads lead back, but the camera then will cut to a backside of an actor to create or to make you feel as if it is one continuous shot. Back to Luke's point, if you didn't have the murder at the beginning, I think this would be even more boring and challenging as a viewer. But you need the murder in order to follow that. And then with Hitchcock, of course, you have the theory of the gaze and the way we're looking. And so the camera is almost a character in the film, as we said before. I can't speak to the technicality, but that's at least what he was trying to do, was to create the illusion of, and Luke, I know, is from the theater, to create the illusion of a stage play.
Yes. And I found this amazing YouTube video, and Christian, I will include it in the show notes and in the description, of someone that was dissecting the cuts and how, yes, to the sleight of hand to hide the masking of changing the reels, they would zoom in on someone's back, except for 5 moments in the film where it is a direct cut. It's not a transition from someone's back to another role. And those are used so deliberately to be reaction shots. Instead of it sliding across, it instantly cuts. And we have only 5 of them are used, and the rest of the
Can
time
you
it is
name
that.
them?
Well, it's the first one. The first one I know is the scream, because we go from the street to the window and then we cut instantly to inside.
Yep.
And then you have a shot where Brandon and Philip are talking, and then it cuts to the housekeeper. And then probably the best reaction shot is when Philip gets so flustered and angry about the accusation of strangling a chicken that it then cuts straight to Rupert and his reaction, because he was like, why are you getting so defensive about that? And again, it's Hitchcock using reaction shots for cutting so that you as the audience don't miss anything in this intimate setting. And also the way that he because the rehearsal period for this movie was incredible, because they had to not only stage the actors, but how they were going to move the camera and choreograph the camera movements as well. And one of my favorite little bits is that because then they were Technicolor cameras, so they were about the size of a refrigerator, because they were huge. And so if you look at the archways from each room, there is a small seam at the top of each archway in which it can slide across so that the whole camera can move from one room to the next. Because the doorways weren't wide enough, but they actually would slide out and slide back in. And one of my favorite moments is when the housekeeper is talking to Rupert at the trunk. And it's a full one, again, done in one take, where it fully rotates around. And we've gone from being on the outside looking in to then inside the apartment, and an entire wall has been placed in a corner. And it's so seamless. I didn't even notice it. And I was like, wait a minute, where did the wall come from? We were just over there. Because again, his camera blocking is just so wonderful. But one of the things that I found out, and this is absolutely crazy, because so again, to avoid making as many mistakes as possible, they blocked the hell out of this and choreographed it. But at one point during one of the first takes in a scene, the camera dolly accidentally ran over a cameraman's foot while they were filming it. But someone gagged him and dragged him off of the soundstage, and they kept filming even though they fully broke his foot.
It's a kinky set, Christian, to your point.
I know.
A lot of gagging going on here.
And then and then in another take, one of I think it's either Janet or the aunt accidentally puts her glass down but misses the table, and a stagehand had to rush in and catch it before it hit the ground. And both of those scenes are actually in the movie. So the take where the poor camera operator got his foot run over and where the glass got caught were kept in the finished film, which I think is hysterical.
Wow.
But I just feel so bad for that poor cameraman whose foot got hurt. That is one hell of a story to tell at dinner parties.
I wonder if he was okay after that.
I'm just saying that's an anecdote that you would never get over telling at dinner parties. Also, I love the meta humor of when Janet and the aunt are struggling to remember the name of the movie that Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman starred in. It's Notorious, which was directed by Alfred Hitchcock. So he's even winking at the audience of like, see, I'm, and of course, did you two spot, this is actually, he makes 2 cameos in this film. Did you catch both of them?
No.
I know Christian played Where's Alfred? I thought he's not here. Is he here?
So
I kept wanting to see where he was, and I couldn't find him.
And Christian, shame on you with Strangers that you didn't catch him coming out of the train, but on that pod. But Luke, is he here? Is he the trunk?
Where is he hiding?
Is he the coffin?
No, he's not.
You could definitely eat a meal off of Hitchcock's belly.
Oh my God. Colin, your sense of humor, I just love it so much. So
I'm canceled.
No, you're not.
No.
So so if you're looking out of the window, there is, once it gets to nighttime, there is a red neon sign that is in the silhouette of Hitchcock that you can see out the window. But then you can also see him as the credits are rolling, right before the camera pans over to the window. He's walking with a woman down the street, how it's like populated. You can see Hitchcock walking with a woman down the street because he felt that his silhouette was too obvious, or a blinking, like he was like, I don't think people will get it. It wasn't too obvious. He thought that people wouldn't get it, so that's why he included himself twice in this film. But yeah, because I know that he makes a cameo in all of his movies, but when I found out that he did the neon sign and was walking in the frame, because I was like, he's nowhere in the party. Like, where is he? But
Oh
I
my
had to go looking.
gosh.
I had to go looking through video essays and
Ah,
books to find out where he was hiding.
that is excellent. Yeah, when I gained a little COVID weight, I'd always like in a floor length mirror think of Hitchcock when the belly arrives before, the stomach comes in before the face. It was like Alfred Hitchcock presents COVID weight presents. Here he is. That's amazing. I love his sense of humor. It's so devious. This whole film is so devious. The thing, yeah.
Again, it's just like all of the. Again, there's a lot of puns in this movie, and I know that
Oh, yeah.
it's very punny. And
Yes.
again, it's just, and again, all the innuendos and all of it is just so hilarious. And
Luke, may I interrupt?
Go ahead.
I never strangled a chicken, is what Philip says. My
Yes,
AirPods died, but I think I can flip over. But I never strangled a chicken is a quote from Rope. Yeah.
yes, one of the most famous. It's again, it's just I Farley Granger just does such a good job of playing like I am so on edge right now because of my guilty by association. There is also a goof in this film that is rather obvious, and I caught it, didn't even have to look it up. But so Philip breaks the martini glass in his hand, and his hand is bleeding. But then there is a scene, there is again that's transition on someone's back, and then he's talking to the aunt who's then doing his palm reading, and then his hand isn't cut. So that is a goof.
He was magically healed.
It was magically healed between takes. So that's one of the few only goofs in the movie, at least that's like noticeable to the audience. But I also found it hilarious that they were again in universe talking about actors in movies and how someone, I think it's either the aunt or Janet, I can't remember, but someone mentioned in the film about who would make a good villain, and someone said James Mason. And he ultimately did get cast in an Alfred Hitchcock movie, which is North by Northwest. But it took 11 years after Rope for him to finally make his way into a Hitchcock film.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I never thought of James Mason as handsome, but yes, I guess so.
I mean, to each their own. Everybody has their like, what is it, hall pass or like five that they would.
There's no accounting for taste. Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, this is probably. I didn't realize this, but this was Hitchcock's very first movie shot in Technicolor. And of course, he had
but you answered my question.
Yes, it was the first one that he shot in Technicolor, and I think because again, we talked about this in our review of Marie Antoinette, how I do feel like sometimes we take technical like color film for granted because we're so used to it now. But again, just the physical painstaking process of shooting in Technicolor. I mean, famously, The Wizard of Oz was so difficult to shoot with those cameras, and then this one being so cumbersome that the actors, of course, had to make sure that they were not stepping or tripping on the cables that were littering the floor of this set of the apartment set, because the camera had to keep moving through. So they were like, okay, if I step here, I'm not going to trip over the cables. But again, it was, and I think it was so important for, and I know that Hitchcock in retrospect says that it's gimmicky, but I'm going to give him his flowers. I think that I think that the innovativeness of filming it in one take on one singular location makes it so brilliant. And I think that he should not have been so hard on himself to claim that this was a gimmick or anything. And yeah, those are my fun facts and behind the scenes. And
I mean, when he achieves so much, he can look back at one film, as I'm sure we all do. We look at one thing we did and said, that was maybe not perfect, but when you've made the films that he made, this maybe was not perfect, but it's a great experiment. It's great to think about.
I mean, Sondheim wrote Anyone Can Whistle, so everyone has at least one flop in their arsenal. So
I can't whistle though.
You just put your lips together and blow.
Oh, yeah. Sounds so easy when you say it.
Fantastic.
This was so much fun. This was a blast. This was a fun dinner party to come to for sure. But thank you so much, Colin, for coming on for a full, proper film review. We love having you on before, and we will definitely have you on again because you're hoot and you are so astute with your observations. I loved all of them. Even disagreeing with me, I was like, go for it. I'm fully okay with that too. But Colin, where can our listeners and viewers find you?
I'm going to quote Janet from Rope. She said something like, "You write books in small print, big words, and no sales." Which she kind of nailed it. To Luke's point, Janet has kind of she's clocking the whole scene. But yeah, I write for the Gay and Lesbian Review. Love being a guest here. And my book is on Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley. I'm working on a Jane Austen book, and this week we come on her 200th anniversary of Jane's death. And so working on that, and just love talking to you fellas.
My God.
Well, congratulations on A, your first book, but B, your second one. That's going to be exciting.
Yeah. I love Jane Austen.
Appreciate the time. And where else can I wear a suit jacket and a bathing suit? So you might have seen a knee here, but
I did. I was like,
I wasn't going to say anything.
That's a different Zoom. Okay.
Listeners, thank you so much for listening to our episode on Rope of that old gay classic cinema. Our wonderful host and creator, Christian Garcia, myself, your co-host, Luke Del Mar, and our amazing guest, Colin Carman. You can follow us, of course, here on YouTube if you're watching for the visual aid that goes with the podcast. Listen to us on Spotify and Apple, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, give us a 5-star review, leave in the comments any films that you would like to see us review through a queer theoretical lens. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok for all social media posts and updates. But until next time, bye, listeners. Thank you.
Bye.